We are at the first ever 2022 Sprint Enduro World Championship in Sandy Level, Virginia. The creator of the US Sprint Enduro has a vision of giving everyone in the world the opportunity to come to America to experience Sprint Enduro the US way. It started out on Saturday with dry conditions, but unfortunately for some, after day one, it rained all night Saturday into Sunday. And to say the least, it got slick. The AMA US ISDE team was here getting prepared in the practice they need to dominate the 6 days in France this year. KTM Josh Toth was tough to beat in. He was on top of the board the entire weekend. Layne Draper was looking strong. He was running second most of the weekend, but ended up third for the overall. Kailub Russel is getting back on the track again. He is part of the ISDE team. On day one, Kailub was third, but he must love the mud because he jumped in front of Layne Draper and ended up the weekend in second. Dante Oliveira, I hope I'm saying that right. He had a good weekend. He ended up in the Pro 1 class in fifth. Craig DeLong got fourth for the weekend. Unfortunately, I was not able to get out into the woods and get very much video of the pros as they were out on the track. I was happening to line up. I wish I could have got out there and seen them ripping up the track, but unfortunately that was not in the cards. It's time to go get lined up. I did get you a full lap both Saturday and Sunday on the cross test and the enduro test. Let's line up. This is the third cross test, the last cross test on day one. I am running Senior A 40 plus. At this current time, I was running second behind Mike Cheney. The cross test was very fun and flowy. Test one was a little sketchy with the loose grass that was cut. The dirt was primo. We are at the River's Edge complex. They have a small moto cross section. That's where we start out the cross test. Billy and the crew laid out a awesome track. My motorcycle of choice this weekend is my 2020 Beta 430RR Race Edition. Unfortunately, my GoPro has seen better days. My last race, which was the Snowshoe GNCC, it was a mudder as well. And evidently I have not got all the water or the dirt out of the mic. So I want to apologize for the terrible sound that my GoPro brought this weekend. I guess it's time for an upgrade. But I'll get you out of here. Trail Seeker Adventures brings the camera and we get you out on the track so you can see what the first ever Sprint Enduro World Championship was all about. If you raced the event, leave a comment. If you're wondering what it's all about, Sprint Enduro is fairly new to the US. The US Sprint Enduro is doing their best to bring the Sprint Enduro world to the United States so you all can try it. It is definitely unique. You are racing the clock. You cannot see what your competition is doing, so you have to do the best you can with fewest amount of mistakes as possible. I am no sprinter. I don't like going no faster than I have to. But in order to get faster, you have to try new things. I have definitely learned that every second on the track counts. And this format shows it more than anything I've ever raced. If you make a mistake in 1 or 2 turns, you will see that when you get back and look at the results. The crazy thing is, sometimes you will think you had an awesome lap, you'll go back and look at your times, and even though it's felt smooth, you were slower. And then I also had the exact opposite. There's been times like, man, that is the worst lap I've had all weekend. And you go back and you look at the results, and surprisingly enough, that was your fastest lap. Bike setup seems to be even more important in this format. When I race a 2-hour event, obviously you want your bike to handle as good as possible, but when you come out here, such as even this little dip, I almost went over the bars right there, and I actually went slower than I had all weekend, but I think my rebound was a little fast on the rear. But I was able to get the bike to turn better on the last US Sprint Enduro. I lowered the front end, got a little more weight on the front wheel. I was able to, what I felt, go a little faster. But unfortunately, I think on day 2, that's going to come back to bite me. I know everybody was having handling problems on this track. You look at it now and you're like, man, that looks so fun, flowy, looks like traction is not a problem. Well, you wait until Sunday. I will be bringing you a full lap on the cross test. I was all over the place. Mr. Mike Cheney is a very fast sprinter. I most of the time have to depend on him beating himself by ending up on the ground, but unfortunately on day 1 he didn't touch the ground all day. If there's Billy and Nancy, the race promoter, they put so many hours and hours of thought and work so we can come out here and have an awesome weekend. But usually Mike's on the ground a time or two because he's putting it all out on the track. I try to stay off the ground, especially with having a jacked up knee. But by the end of the weekend, Mike was on the ground, all sweaty. Each test I was getting faster, he was getting a little slower. At the end of day 1, I ended up second, I think 40 some seconds behind him. But I thought I could wear him down on day 2. Hopefully that he would be on the ground a little more. Not that I want him to be hurt, of course. I don't want him to get hurt. But that's most of the time the only way I can make up time on him with his own mistakes. And I was right. He was on the ground probably more than normal, but so wasn't I. So make sure you hang around and watch out for day 2. The cross test was laid out about 3, I think there were 3 different field sections. There's a little moto section. This is a little cut through between the bottom field and the upper field. This little rocky uphill is somewhat tricky. It wasn't hard to make, but it was hard to make clean. We're working our way up to the top field, which was the last field. Heidi was able to come out and race. She was running second on day 1. She went out on day 2. but the mud was a little more than she wanted to deal with. So she called it quits and ended up second for the weekend. These long left hand off cambers, probably where I'm the slowest. Watching these videos back, I see where I need to like get on the throttle a little harder, like coming out of this turn. Stay in the throttle a little longer. I know what I need to do, but just doing it on race day, that's another story. Probably the worst thing about day one was the humidity. It was hot, but it was so humid, it drawed the sweat out of you just sitting around talking. I had a fan going at the pits. Mike was pit beside me. He comes over and he looked like a drowned rat. He was sweating so bad. But that is one complete cross test on day one. Now we'll go back, make some adjustments, fill your bike up, get ready for the enduro test. If you haven't tried a sprint enduro, especially if you're a moto guy or if you've not been on a bike very much or at all, these things are perfect. You don't have to worry about people running over you, lapping you. You just go out, you do your lap, you come back, you rest, you reset your body, your bike, and you go out. The tracks usually are between 3 to 4 miles. This is Mark. He was running between 3rd and 4th on day one. He is very fast on the cross test. He probably struggles a little more on the enduro test.
Leave it in 3rd and then just leave it in 3rd, you know what I mean?
But that's one thing you
I gotta get out there on an e-bike.
find out where you're good at, where you're bad at, and you try and improve. I enjoy the cross test, but that's where I probably need to get a little faster. This weekend, the enduro test was 3 miles, and the cross test was 4. The enduro, probably the main obstacle. It's a little tighter than some. You had some roots. It's kind of a hard red clay. So ruts was definitely not a problem. Not until day 2. Just a little heads up. Day 2 rut was, there's definitely a rut. It's pretty much one rut all the way around. On day 1, if you've seen a line that wasn't being used, it really wasn't a big deal. Like right here, I was going left and right. He was able to do that because getting out of the main line was not a problem. On day 2, that was the problem. On day 2, with it being so muddy with a single rut, even if you wanted to get out and try a better line, you couldn't, because it was so slick. On day 1, the ruts were almost perfect. They were there. There was enough to get traction, but not enough to keep you dedicated to one line. This is the uphill. That was probably the steepest and probably the toughest obstacle. On day 2, they had to take that option out. But I will get you some video of lap 1 on day 2. Enduro test had different options, but really there was no one option. Like here I went left and then cut to the inside on the right. I felt that was a little faster, but that was the thing with this track. There were some options, but they really wasn't something that was going to make a big difference. Maybe a half second here, a second there, but believe it or not, in this format, that makes a difference at the end of the day. Mike Cheney was ripping the woods this weekend. He was kicking my butt. I was able to get within a few seconds of him on the cross test, which is rare because usually he's faster on the cross test. But he's on a YZ 250 two-stroke, and he must have been putting it through the woods. Especially lap 1, both on the cross test and the enduro test, I was holding back a little bit, trying to get the track to clean off a little bit before I send it. But even once the track, as you can see, is cleared, really nothing loose. I tried a few lines here and there, but really didn't feel that it made a big difference. But didn't feel comfortable getting up to max speed for some odd reason. This was probably my best lap as far as picking lines. There were a few lines that I found that was faster. I missed a few lines that I felt was probably costing me a little time. This property had a little bit of everything. It had sand, rocks. We're coming into a little rock section, a little rock garden. It had red clay. It had perfect dirt on day 1. It had the absolutely worst dirt on day 2, and it's the exact same dirt. This clay, I mean, today traction was really not an issue. On day 2, there was no traction. Actually, on day 2, which I also get you a pretty much a full enduro video as well. The woods, I felt more comfortable in the woods, but you had to stay in the rut. As you'll see, once I get to day 2, if you got your front wheel out of the rut, you almost just had to stop, get your wheel in the rut, and then take off. If this is the first time you've watched Trail Seeker Adventures, we bring the video, or the GoPro, to the race, the walking trail, the hiking trail, the mountain bike trail, the race event, the ride park, whatever we go and do, we bring the information back. We put it out there on the YouTube so you can see if that's a event that your friends or family would like to go and try. We're coming into the 2-mile marker. We got 1 mile to go. It's probably the more off camber, tighter section. But make sure you like to subscribe to our channel. We are Trail Seeker Adventures. If you like getting out on the trail, we are the YouTube channel for you. If you've been watching any of my videos this summer, you know that I've got a torn ACL. I've got to get it replaced. But on this weekend, I was pretty much pain-free. I was trying to race and not even think about it, even though my knee still has issues. So I was pretty much up to normal speed. Maybe a little hesitant to send it in some areas just so I didn't throw my foot down to try to catch myself. But for the most part, I felt like I was almost back to normal speed. There were a spot down through, I'm not sure, I don't think it was through here. But there was a spot that I was catching something and it was wanting to throw me into a tree. Actually, the last 2 Enduro tests, which I somehow missed the tree. But that was really the only scary moment I had on day 1. This is the last test of Saturday, day 1, and I'm actually starting to see Mike Chaney up here a little bit. He's got a rider ahead of him. He does get around the other guy. This is a existing trail that Billy used getting back to the finish line. That is very rare. Billy usually gets on a property and looks and see what it has to offer, and most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, you are on virgin trail. This little section became kind of tough on day 2 because of the mud. Spectators, we're getting close to the finish, wrapping up the last test of the day on Saturday. It's time to go back, regroup, and figure out what the strategy will be for tomorrow. Unfortunately, it rained, and rained, which normally I don't mind mud, and for some stupid reason, I was excited that it was raining. I totally forgot about my leg. Unfortunately, when you have a bad knee, you don't want to have to catch yourself. Well, on this red clay, unfortunately, I was having to catch myself a lot, and it definitely slowed me down. It will be the cross test. I believe this is the second cross test. The first time I went out here, I looked to the left. Nancy says, "You got this thing. This is your kind of race." I go right here and I crash in turn 1. Little embarrassing, but pretty typical for me. This red clay was so slick. My bike was not handling very well at all. The front end, I was constantly fighting it. The back end wanted to catch and pass the front end. I'm sure everybody was dealing with the same situation. I know Mike spent a lot of time on the ground. We'll see him up here shortly. But you see, I'm like seesawing the handlebars back and forth. I could not. Right there's Mike on the right, laying on the ground. He does get up and gets taken off. That's not the last time we'll see him on the ground today. I was getting ready for day 2. I was dressed. I looked out. I had my 300 2-stroke. I was looking at it. I'm like, that's the bike I should run today, but I'm not real sure. I know on a normal, typical weekend of the US Sprint Enduro, you can change a bike on day 2 because they're 2 separate points paying days. But the way this World Championship is, it's one race. You get credit for one race. So I'm not sure if you're allowed to change your bike in the middle of the race event. So I just stuck with the 430. I'm looking back because I know Mark's faster than me. He's in my class. Obviously, I think he started the day, I don't know, maybe a minute or less behind me. And as bad as I'm feeling, I am sure he's going to pass me for the weekend. So I just don't want to be in his way. You can do that out here on the cross test, but the enduro test, it was almost impossible. There were spots that might be double lined or different sections, but it was pretty much a single rut completely around the enduro test. I think here I get over, wave him across, but it was good. I'm glad I did. I get a little footage so you can see what we were dealing with. He's slipping and sliding. You can see his feet are on the ground, and that's exactly what I'm trying not to do. This is the second test. I did the cross test. I fell in turn 1, made a fool of myself. No big deal. That's just who I am. Then somewhere right here in this bottom, I fall again. So I fell twice on cross test 1 on day 2, but then on the enduro test, you seen my opening video. Well, that was me on the second test. It was the first enduro for day 2. That's not confusing at all, but I did go down. I threw my leg down to catch myself. I felt the pain, and instead of continuing to keep my foot down, I just fell over. And so this is the next test after that. So I'm very hesitant to put my foot down. Just trying to survive the weekend. I went from having an absolutely blast on day 1, trying to hunt down Mike Cheney, to on day 2, hating life. Not really hating life, but anytime I'm on my dirt bike, I'm happy. But when you got an injury that you're trying to not make worse, you're not really having a lot of fun. And I'm going backwards. So I was second, trying to maybe have an opportunity to get to first, but now I'm second, trying not to go back to third, fourth, fifth. But like I say, we're all dealing with the same conditions. We were all out here probably trying to cut the same corners, looking for traction. I'll get up here and I'll show you Mike Cheney on the ground one more time, and then we'll jump to the enduro. These off cambers was pretty slick. You get out here in the sloppy mud, that is not where you want to be. So I'm coming around this turn, fighting for my life, looking for traction. I look over here and Mike Cheney's laying on the ground. I'm kind of laughing underneath my helmet. He said on test 1 he hit a ditch and went face first. He said he thinks he gained speed as he was sliding down the track. He said he was laughing so hard at himself. But I come around here, I saw him laying on the ground, and I even know it's slick. I come around here and I'm about to do the same thing. Right there, the back end takes off. But that's pretty much what we had to deal with out here on the cross test on day 2. I might as well take you down here to the sand berm. This was a little muddy section even on day 1. But we come around and there was a deep sugar sand section. This right here about caught me a few times on day 1. There's just a little ditch in there that kind of threw you a little goofy. So this was where Nancy and Billy was standing on the last cross test I showed you. But this is the deep sand. I was surprised that this didn't get no worse than it did. But let's switch to the enduro test. So this is actually the first enduro test on day 2. This is before I went down and hurt my knee, or re-hurt my knee. The 40A class, the thing I enjoy about it is we fight to beat each other out on the track. But when we're sitting here talking about our race or former lap problems, we are as a best friends. Mike and I, we are good friends on and off the track. We park by each other. We ride track. When I actually hurt my knee, he was one that was at track 93 to help get me and my bike off the track. So we're good friends on and off the track, but some of these guys I don't see other than on race day, and what a pretty cool experience to be able to race and just have fun with each other. Alright, so I just got off of the cross test. I didn't do very well. Alright, I'm thinking I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna get on the enduro test, and I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna do what I can. The ruts are starting to develop. Now this is just the first enduro. The youth has been out here. Actually, the youth, they cut this section out for the youth. There's the downhill and an uphill that they cut out for the youth. So we're the first ones out here on this section. They did try to bring the 50s out here and down to the bottom of the hill. They went right. But this is the downhill. The 50s went right there. And we're coming out across the bottom. I should have probably got some video of the last enduro test because the ruts aren't really showing right now. But it got to the point where it was pretty much a single rut. Feeling pretty good at the moment. Feel like I'm moving pretty good. The bike's feeling pretty decent. I am a little concerned about this uphill just because of the roots. I know that I have to carry my momentum up this hill in order to get up over the roots. So we're ripping up through here, and right here's where you really got to carry your speed to get up over these roots. A little jacked up, but not too bad at all. So we're on top of the hill, we're dropping back down, and this is where the youth came on the track. And now you can start seeing some of the ruts. Still not too bad. Now I'll show you what I mean by if you get your front wheel out of the rut. You can see the rut starting to develop through here pretty good. but I come around here and my front wheel gets out of the rut somehow. So I basically have to stop, get my balance, and get going. That happened to me a couple times on day 2. They had to take this section out as well on the next test, on test 2 of the Enduro. This is not a good place to be down here. I wanted to stay up top, but traction was not allowing that to happen. Mike, Colt, and Braxton Cheney, we came out here yesterday evening. We was going to bike the track. I had a couple line selections that I was wanting to clean up, and we got out here. It started raining, and we was not able to even pedal our e-bikes. We had to basically push them back to the camper. And Mike made the comment, well, I can tell you right now, this ain't going to help me at all tomorrow. And he was exactly right. All the lines that I found yesterday, they are gone. You basically had to follow the line that everybody else has been following. You wasn't able to get out of the main rut, especially on test 2. So the idea that I was going to come out here and try to clean up some of my lines, nope, did not happen. My bike was handling pretty good. Obviously it was getting heavy, especially as the ruts started developing. As long as I was in a rut, I was fine, but as soon as I got out of a rut here or there, it would the front end wanted to push. Even at this point, I'm pretty much riding at my normal pace. Obviously, trying to be trying to be safe about it, but I'm coming down into a area where I crash, which is right here. And at first, I mean, I felt my knee. I knew I did something to my knee, but you don't want to admit that you have a problem. So I get up, I get going, and the pain is not going away. So from here on in, I pretty much limp it in. I get back to the pits. I go out for test 2. I came in and I'm like, man, I can't ride. I normally don't look at my times from each time because it just makes me more nervous. But I walked up to the tent, I took a picture of the times. I'm like, if they're catching me, if they're only like 30 seconds behind me, I'm done. I'm not coming out here going to jack my knee up any worse. And I was going to quit for the day, but I had a minute and a half over. I already lost second, so I was in third. Fourth and fifth, I didn't know it at the time. Unfortunately for Brent, he was ahead and was fighting to try to stay in fourth, and I did not realize that. I want to tell him sorry because he caught me through this section, the last 2 enduros, and I just didn't want to give up any time, so I didn't pull over, mostly because of the ruts and the way they were. But I had a minute or so on them, so I just wanted to try to keep that as much as possible so I can at least end the weekend in third, which I did. But that's pretty much the way our weekend went. Heidi got second. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. We are Trail Seeker Adventures. We bring this content to you. I don't mind at all getting the video. I absolutely hate sitting here putting it on a computer for you to watch on YouTube, but if you're getting something out of it, I'll keep doing it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Make sure you leave a comment. We are Trail Seeker Adventures. You can like and subscribe by pushing the button in the middle. Thanks for watching.